Hey there, friends, it's Walt. So I was strapped into the front passenger seat in an old Twin Otter aircraft. And by old, I mean like really old and dented up. And I was flying from the airport in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, to the most dangerous airport in the world, the Lukla Airport, deep in the Khumbu region of the Himalayas, surrounded by peaks, like 20 and 22,000 and, like Everest region of Nepal. And you discover why it's the most dangerous airport in the world pretty quickly as you begin to fly in and out of these high peaks that are towering all around the aircraft. And then as you approach, the first person in the first passenger seat of the aircraft has a really good view of this because there was no cabin door like there are on most airplanes. You can see right through into the cabin beyond the pilot down to the runway. And this runway is really, really short, and then it ends in a sheer cliff. Oh, and it begins in a sheer drop off as well. So you have an idea as to why this is the most dangerous airport in the world. And the aircraft comes in, and of course, there are a lot of mountain winds and turbulence, and the aircraft is jumping up and down. And I'm watching us get closer and closer to this runway, and I'm watching the cliff get closer and closer. And all of a sudden, I see the pilot reach to his left, and he picks up this laminated card, and he begins to look at it. And I'm thinking, why are you looking in that card? You should be looking at the runway. And I realized that the pilot was holding a laminated card, which was his pre-landing checklist. And he was going down this checklist so that he landed the plane safely at the most dangerous airport in the world. This episode reminded me of the critical import of having standard operating procedures, which is what I want to talk with you about today. Standard operating procedures allow us to have a whole lot more focus, more acuity. It decreases stress, decreases overwhelm, increases productivity, and it reduces the likelihood of failure, of error. And for those of you in the audience who are my lawyer colleagues and professional service colleagues, it avoids the M word, like malpractice. So the whole lesson that I want to share with you today is that we need to have standard operating procedures. We do things already in the same or similar ways, but if we can memorialize that, if we can encapsulate that into the way we as law firms, as organizations, as companies, as leaders, as entrepreneurs and business professionals, if we can encapsulate that and memorialize that so that it becomes this standard way of doing it, we reap incredible rewards. So the gold standard that I want everyone to work toward is having a comprehensive operations manual that informs everyone in the organization about how everything is done, from answering the phone to memorializing that phone call, to onboarding, to opening files, to communications, to follow-up, to closing, to all across the operation of a business. There are intricate things that happen throughout the day over the arc of projects, over the arc of legal matters. These things happen in sequential order, and they happen with fair regularity. Friends, there's a reason that the hamburger you get in San Francisco at McDonald's is the same hamburger that you get in the Bronx in New York, is the same hamburger that you get in London, is the same hamburger that you get in St. Petersburg, Moscow, because they have an operations manual such that the 17-year-old who is making the burger gets it right everywhere they make burgers. And I'm afraid to tell you that we're in the burger making business. And I don't care how sophisticated your business or your practice is, we sell burgers and we make burgers day in and day out. And so the gold standard is to have an operations manual that helps people make the burgers over and over again in the same way for all of those wonderful outcomes. Now, it is monumentally difficult to sit down and to create an operations manual that has that level of breadth and depth and utility. I don't want you to go there. I don't want you to even begin to think about going there. It's not necessary. Wherever you and your business, your practice, your firm are is exactly the right place right now. You are exactly in the right place and exactly where many people are. It may be nowhere, and that's fine because wherever you are, we can start. So you have extant practices and procedures. You may have a way that you open files or onboard or communicate with new clients. That's a great place of beginning. Begin to memorialize each thing that you do. Perhaps the place of beginning even is to take the last 3 onboarding letters, for example, and creating a template for it. This is the most important starting principle I want to invite you to embrace, which is that standard operating procedures don't need to be complicated. They don't need to involve a lot of SaaS products or programs or a lot of people or a lot of moving parts. That pilot in 𝗩𝗚𝗃𝗏 was using a laminated card, a set of steps that he was going through to land that plane safely. Pilots use checklists. They are more automated in later iterations of aircraft, but it's the same thing. In operating rooms, surgeons have checklists. They have checklists they go down through before they start a complicated or any surgical procedure. And they have one at the end so that they don't miss stuff at the end. So checklists themselves are very simple standard operating procedures. Templates, your templates that you send out of Outlook or Gmail or whatever program you use for emails, there are templates that you send over and over and over again. If you just template them, they can become a standard operating procedure. There are the ways that you memorialize phone calls or open your files. Those can become standard operating procedures. And the first step is simply to begin to memorialize them. A really, really, really easy place, of course, is that checklist. You can create a manual checklist for your admin to follow that they go down through. You can have that checklist live in various places that people can look at. It can be in a Google document or an Outlook document, or it can be on a Word document. It could be a laminated template. Doesn't matter. It can live in more complicated places like Asana or Tranual or project.io. There are lots of places. That's the topic of another tutorial. There are lots of places where this stuff can live. But the most important thing is just to begin to get things down on a document, on a card, somewhere, so that the next time somebody is doing something, they can just go down that list, like the pilot went down that list. So start wherever you are and pick the thing that perhaps you do most frequently, or pick the thing that causes you the most difficulty or friction, or pick the thing that keeps you up at night. So I remember as a lawyer, as the managing partner of a law firm, that one of the things that used to keep me up at night, which keeps up a lot of lawyers, is the statute of limitations. Well, that's one of those mistakes as lawyers that can really get us into trouble. So having a standard operating procedure that's foolproof, that when, for example, that file comes in, the statute of limitations immediately gets notated on the intake form, that it immediately gets imprinted on the inside of the pleadings backer, that it immediately gets put on the outside of the Brownwell, that it immediately gets put on the firm-wide calendar and on the responsible attorney's calendar. There could be a checklist for every place that statute of limitations is put, and there can be an SOP with respect to when the reminders of that statute are. Does the reminder come up a year before, or 6 months before, or a month before, and the week before, so that does it appear on the assistant's calendar and on the responsible attorney's calendar? So you get my drift here, is that we create an SOP that we institute at that beginning moment, and that becomes the thing that guides the whole arc of that particular case over time. It's an SOP that we just follow every single time. And as my example shows, there are multiple places so that we reduce even further the possibility of failure or error. So whatever we do over and over again can become a document. It can become, look, I'm sharing this lesson with you about SOPs in a video format. This is a great way. In fact, you can take this video right now and drop it into your training manual as the why we create SOPs part of your training manual. So this is a wonderful format to create an SOP in. There's this tool called Loom, LOOM.com. It's a tool that we use in our company over and over again, every day, multiple times a day, to screen share how we walk through a process, a video tutorial. You can run an MP3 off your iPhone dictating this and then have it transcribed. There are so many ways to memorialize what you do. The important thing is not how you do it or how robust it is or how beautiful it is, but simply that it gets done, because done is better than perfect, and at least you have a step forward. So we, in our company, we have an SOP for creating SOPs, because as I said, it's really hard at the get-go to sit down and think, oh, I got to create an entire operations manual. So we've adopted a standard operating procedure for creating standard operating procedures. And it's this, it's pretty simple. And if you do this all of the time, over a pretty short period of time, you grow the number of resources in your operations manual, your Outlook folder, your Google folder, wherever you leave this, Traniel, wherever you leave this. But over time, this expands and it becomes really, really valuable. So our SOP for creating SOPs is any time that one of us is learning something for the very first time, we document it. We write it down, or we dictate it, or we create a Loom video around it. We document it. And again, doesn't have to be perfect. Just got to get it done. Just document it. If you're onboarding a brand new admin and you're teaching them again about, how you open a file, or how you follow up from a phone message, or how you document the messaging, or what you do with emails and how you archive those emails. In that onboarding with a new admin or a new staff person, you should be running that Zoom video or running your iPhone or some way of just memorializing that and then dropping it into your folder, to your operations manual. So anytime you yourself are learning something for the very first time, that's number one in our SOP for SOPs. Anytime I'm learning something for the very first time, some piece of tech, some piece of new information that I want to share with my team, I document it. Number two, anytime I'm teaching it for the very first time, I'm documenting it. So you might get the impression that this isn't the first time I've taught this, but every time I teach even how to teach this, it may be an upgrade to what's existing in our operations manual. And I'll come to that in a moment. But if I'm teaching someone, if I'm teaching one of my senior team something, we document it. And the third thing is anytime something goes bump in the night, anytime there's a tech problem or a personnel problem, anytime we actually have to get help, get on a chat line, get on a helpline, we document it. Because if it's happened once, it's likely to happen again. And so you don't want to have a situation like we've had where you solve a problem, you spend half an hour on hold, and then you get the help and you implement the fix, and then 6 months from now you have the same problem and you can't remember how you solved it. If you document that and drop it in your Tranual, drop it in your Google folder, you have it to refer to over time. Now, I alluded to this. These first iterations are a little bit messy, a little bit sloppy. That's okay. The person who is closest to the operation itself is given given the green light to update these and to modify them as time goes on. In fact, that is an SOP. You tell your people that is part of their job, is to update the SOP if they see holes in it. We onboarded a new person last year, and we have this big repository of processes and procedures, and something went wrong. Something didn't happen. Something went off the rails. She made a mistake. And I went back in, super, super bright human being. I went back in and I realized there was a hole that I had left when I first created the SOP. And I said, not your fault, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to go back in and amend that SOP, update that SOP so that it fixes that hole. And if you see additional problems, what I want you to do, what I invite you to do, what I ask you to do is that you update those SOPs so that they're always current. So then we take these SOPs and we archive them somewhere. We want good naming conventions. Searchable naming conventions. We use a very a straightforward naming convention. So it is first by date. So it might be, 2023.1.6, which would be the year 2023, the first month, January, the 6th day of the month. So a date convention, so we have an idea as to when this thing was created or last updated, and then a keyword-rich title. And so it might be tutorial on how to create SOPs, standard operating procedures. So now if I went in and searched, we keep ours in Google Drive, SOPs, well, this would come up. Tutorial SOPs, this would come up. So you get the idea, something that is searchable, and then you take it and you create an overarching repository with subfolders for each big topic, like onboarding, closing files, calendaring, communications, and those subfiles become valuable. So over time, over weeks and months, you grow this repository and it becomes richer and richer. And as you onboard people, you don't have to keep doing it over and over again with people. As you are doing the same things and you come up against the bumps in the night, you yourself have that resource. And the beautiful thing is it does over time dramatically take the stress down, take the overwhelm down, increase the productivity, and dramatically reduce the likelihood of failure, also known as malpractice. And you'll sleep better at night. And not only that, a different topic for a different day, one of the big issues that leadership has is delegation, because if we always have to teach someone else how to do something over and over again, it's like, oh, it's just going to be faster for me to do it myself. If you have a tutorial, it's right there. So delegation becomes easier, which increases the engagement of your people. It helps if you have a big repository of resources. It increases recruitment and retention, because that's a nice thing to have. So there are so many good reasons that you want to adopt SOPs and the creation of SOPs. Now, one last thing. The resistance will be, oh, well, I'm busy, I'll do it next time. That will always come to pass. You've got to make a decision organizationally, individually, that I'm just going to start. I'm going to start. It might be sloppy, it might be messy, but regardless of how hard it is, at least I'm going to run the thing right now and get it in somewhere. So done is better than perfect. Getting it started, not telling yourself the story that it will happen someday. Start now. And create for yourselves an SOP for how you're going to create SOPs. And before you know it, you're going to have an amazing resource that will make life easier and sweeter, and you'll have a safe landing. In any event, if you have questions or worries or comments or concerns, reach out and we'll sort them out together. Hope this has been valuable. Take good care. Bye for now.